Welcome to all inspiring chefs, cooks, and everything in between alike. This is Hungover Griever, your host as always. This is my bar, the place I am always at, and this is Shokugeki no Soma, chapter 305. Let's get into it because this chapter, while I can talk a few things about it, thankfully Arena has very little to do with it, and the total destruction of her character will be saved for another review, so we won't have to have another 10-minute rant about the problems that have happened thus far. Chapter 305 here, however, we start off much the same. We don't really get into the battle yet. We get more reaction stuff. There's some key things I want to point out, though. Number one, when we start the chapter, you know, they're like staring each other down, like, oh, and everyone's all like, cross knives, cross knives. And everyone's like, wow, cross knives must have been really impressive in the Megami match. A lot of people think that Saiba can win this whole thing, no problem. You know, someone's like, it doesn't affect me, I don't care. And it's like, yeah, that's way back when. That's way back, remember, at the beginning of Totsuki, he was despised and hated, and people booed him on the stage, right? So none of this affects him, and that's just true. None of it does. Then the Polar Star dorm shows up, but I noticed one key thing. No member of the Elite 10. You know, none of them seem to show up. And I'm sitting there like, where are they? Like, don't tell me they were in the blue competition this entire time and just nobody... Like, we didn't focus on them or see them or no one knew they were there. Like, please don't do that to me, right? Like, don't tell me that Ishiki, Shinomiya, Rindo, all these other people were here and we just never saw them. That would really, I'd be getting close to another dropping the series chapter review if that were the case, if it was revealed that most of the Elite 10 had been there the whole time. Whoa, I'd have some issues. But... what happens here is that, okay, and then Gin and, or Jin, depends on your the way you pronounce it, Joshiro and Susanamon, they all get out and stuff, and they're like, so, fated battle time, is it? It's going to be, you know, your former disciple versus your son. This should be interesting. And, of course, they have their banter, like, oh, yeah, Susanamon's daughter was the one who ran this the whole time. That's kind of funny, and... You know, the Joshiro Jin stuff, I always love their banter back and forth because they're clearly the two top chefs in the verse. They are clearly the two #1 chefs. And it's just funny seeing them banter back and forth like this. Like, it's just hilarious. Gin being so serious and Joshiro, of course, always being, you know, flabbergasted, flighty, and all that stuff, right? So it's really, really interesting dynamic. So I don't mind seeing that. But this is where we do have some serious moments, like Joshiro says, this is the first time us meeting in Japan, isn't it? You know, to his former disciple. And once again, I never say that name right. Asahi? Sure, Asahi. And he's like, Joshiro. You know, and he's just kind of like, come on, man. Like, you're doing this whole thing because of that. Now, he pulls out his knife and everything. He's like, here's my knife. And it looks like, of course... At first, I thought that Saiba had won this knife. Asahi had won this knife from Joshiro in that match that we saw at the beginning, right? And they reference that match. We get the flashback thing showing them facing off sort of idea. I thought that that was the knife, that he had won that knife. But this is actually the knife, and both Jin and Joshiro kind of look at it. It's like, is that the knife? It's like, yeah, that's the one. All right. I just want to come up with a possibility right here, and this would not bother me as much. I have a problem with the superhuman powers, right? But this would make way more sense. So he says that this is the knife that he gave to him as a farewell gift. He never won any knife from Joshiro. And so far, he said, this is the knife I used as a student during my Saiba years. Remember, his name is currently Joshiro Yukihira. It's not Saiba Joshiro any longer, right? At least that's what has been claimed and such. So he gives it to him and said, yeah, this is the knife I used in my Saiba years. It's when I was a student. You know, I know if you use this knife and stuff, you'll have, you know, you'll be a great chef someday and stuff. Then it shows a flashback of him beating him, and that's when... We'll get into the villain problems here, but he says, like, yes, that's right. With his own knife, I beat him by using cross knives, by using the own knife of his own disciple, multiplied with another's knife. I was able to even surpass Joshiro, and everyone's just, the whole stadium is shocked. They're like, what? Arena's traumatized. Everybody's screwed up. Now, that at least makes sense. Arena being terrified that Joshiro was defeated. Remember, his food was the one that made the god, that broke through Azami's training, that made the god tongue want to eat. So, even as a little child, Joshiro's food is the thing that could, once again, I believe he could cook something to save mana from the god tongue, but that's just my own opinion. So here's the thing. Before we jump into the rest of the chapter, all about the surpassing of the father and all that stuff. Okay, so he never won the knife. He gave the knife. When did he get cross knives? It couldn't potentially be that Joshiro's knife is what gave him the ability in the first place? That by using the knife of the demon Asura Joshiro, that knife is actually what carried on, and he inherited the ability through the knife, that without that knife, he can't actually use cross knives? That it's the knife that made him good? Now, once again, that sounds absolutely ridiculous. But this whole arc with its superhuman powers and its craziness has been ridiculous. So let's just think in the realm of bizarre ridiculousness for a moment. It would make sense as to why this little punk with very little formal training and not trained by Joshiro to the level of Soma would be so strong and would get this crazy ability just so happen to. No. That knife is the key. And I noticed one other thing. Because why would Joshiro worry about that knife if it didn't hold power? Clearly we're going on a bit of a Toriko level thing here, where the knives of certain chefs hold power onto their own. Like a certain, if you're a master level chef, your knife actually holds a lot of power. In this way, this would make so much sense as to why that both Jin and Joshiro, and I know I keep swapping between Gin and Jin, but whatever. He actually sits there and looks at it and kind of says, is that the knife? Yeah, that's the one. Like, clearly Joshiro has been using another knife since his student years. And we've seen that he can still activate Demon Asura mode. So, clearly, I don't think that knife is his be-all and end-all knife. Joshiro has a stronger knife. He's got his own knife. It's just that this knife is the one when he first unlocked the ability. Maybe he originally had cross knives. And it would make sense. This would lead into so much stuff about my theory about Soma also possessing cross knives, just unintentionally using it. Is that Joshiro's son, of course, would inherit his ability. We've seen that 100 times, that, parents, children, they inherit the powers in shonen. And that the demon Asura, the evil version of cross knives, so to speak, the dark side of the force, would be imbued in that knife or sort of thing. Maybe Joshiro wasn't fully aware that it was there, that it would corrupt him in this way, something like that. But I'm under the total impression that that knife is the reason he's either got cross knives or the whole reason for his ability or something, right? So, to me, once again, Joshiro did not lose that fight. He threw that fight. But I believe that all of Asahi's power comes from that knife and the initial power that it gave him, and his ability cross knives is probably a ability based on that, right? So, anyway, enough of that rant and stuff, but that actually, as you can tell, a little passionate about that. That's actually interesting, and as far as the powers and everything and knives being this powerful and going crazy, that was never established. That's the problem. Like, a lot of people complain about Toriko because it's just over-the-top craziness, but they never tried to be realism. They always said that this is a world with crazy monsters and stuff, so nothing was out of the realm of possibilities. In Shokugeki no Soma, it's supposed to be relatively on-Earth sort of idea, as pseudo-reality, so to speak. So that's why this level gets to ridiculous proportions. But assuming that, it's not bad in the realm of what they've now established in the new arc. Whether it's good or bad what they've established, this explanation works for me until we see otherwise. Now, moving on to the rest of the chapter, of course, he goes nuts and they have to make, Mana says, well, I want some dish that's never been seen before on Earth, sort of idea, right? So, 5 cuisines. She talks all about the different types of cuisines in the world. There's always been the top 5 and sort of thing. And though they differ over the years, these are 5 main staples. And she brings up like Chinese, Italian, that kind of stuff. And says basically, make me a dish that encompasses all 5 cuisines into one dish, sort of idea. And this is where everyone's like, oh wow, how is that even possible? Joshiro just looking on like, yeah, I could do it, sort of idea. Like I just get that feeling from him. He's like, yeah, I probably did that before. And this is where the villain thing's going to go down. So the end of the chapter simply shows everyone like doubting the fact that Soma can even win against Cross Knives. Of course, same setup we've had for the few chapters, and Soma's just like, well, I won't know unless I try. Let's get this party started, sort of idea. With my own knife, he tells Asahi, he's like, oh, I'm not disappointed. You actually beat my dad. He's not even worried about it. He's the only one on face. He's like, huh, that's crazy, but that means that if I beat you, that I'll surpass him because you beat him, and I get to surpass you too. So this is like a 2 birds, 1 stone thing for me. You're just getting me fired up. You're not getting me worried, sort of idea, right? So I like Soma's attitude as being more his own main character self and such. I'm quite interested. And here's the one last thing I want to talk about, because I just went through the chapter. The one last thing is the villain thing. This dude, Saiba Asahi, we've never seen him go crazy like this before, and that's a sign he gonna lose. He's gonna lose out bad. Like, terribly bad. I can't see it going down any other way, because what's something... Alright, think back to Bleach. Aizen was calm, cool, collected, and was never worried ever. But he always had a smile. When he started shouting, when he starts with the crazy eyes and the my power is infinite and stuff, that's when we had final Getsuga Tensho. They're literally setting up Soma to go Bankai here. Is Joshiro going to pull Soma to the side and be like, I'm going to teach you the final Getsuga Tensho? Like I'm literally waiting for them to jump into the Dangai at this point, because that is what's being set up. There's no reason for Saiba Asahi to be all like, I will use Joshiro's knife, and I will use this knife, one of my millions of knives that I can conquer, and I can do this. Cross knives, it's amazing. It's like, no. The moment you do the evil laugh, the maniacal laugh, as a villain who's supposed to be the cool, calm, collected guy that we have seen this entire arc, that means they lose. When they get that personality change, that power drive, that adrenaline, that's when they screw up. That's when they lose. They never, and then he'll be shocked. How? How is his knife so strong? We're going to get that. We are literally going to get that. It happened in Dragon Ball Z. It happened in Toriko. It happened in Naruto. It happened in Bleach. It happened in, Full Metal Alchemist. It happens in everything. In every single series, every shonen. When the calm, cool, over-the-top bad guy starts going maniacal and laughing and getting shocked and not doing the ha. When they start losing their demeanor and losing their cool, that's when they screw up. That's when they lose. But it's so blatantly known at this point that I don't even, I felt like it was a little early. I know the pacing's supposed to be really wrapping things up right now, but because of the disaster that this arc was. But I feel like it's still a little soon, because now we know that Soma's got to win. If Soma doesn't win, then they totally flip a villain trope on its head and made no sense. There's no reason for him to do the maniacal thing, because that's just a telltale sign of it, I don't know. The chapter itself overall was fine. I'm intrigued by the fact that the knife that he got from Joshiro was actually his one from his student years and not one that he actually won from him. It leads me into my theory about cross knives actually from the knife. That basically this is all borrowed power. He never beat Joshiro. He's only been borrowing it, but he couldn't fight against it. He lost to the Wasteland. I hope they bring that back. And I hope we see once again that Soma's version of cross knives is the good-natured, light side of the Force version, that we saw previously in the Regiment de Cuisine. So I'm very interested about that. What do you guys all think? Did you like the chapter? Did you hate the chapter? Did you like the review? Hate the review? Please like, subscribe, comment. As always, it's always very much appreciated. This has been Hungover Griever with your chapter review for 305 of Shokugeki no Soma. So as always, guys, keep cooking, keep drinking responsibly, and we'll see you back here next time. Bye-bye.